Picture this. A bitter wind cuts across a frozen landscape. The ground is hardened into ice and snowflakes sting every exposed inch of skin. In the distance, a lone cave woman huddles against the cold, her only armor the fur and hides she has, painstakingly gathered. How did she survive these merciless winters without the insulated jackets, thermal wear, or modern tools we rely on today? Today, we're diving into the ingenious, often surprising methods our ancestors used to brave the frost. And you might find yourself amazed by just how resourceful a boring cave woman could be. Imagine waking up to a world where every breath is a visible puff of frost, and the wind cuts through your hair like tiny shards of glass. This was the daily reality for our Ice Age ancestors, particularly cave women, who had no modern comforts to shield them from the harsh winters. The Ice Age wasn't just cold, it was unforgiving. Glaciers sprawled across continents, snow covered the ground for months on end, and food sources became scarce. For early humans, survival wasn't about comfort, it was about endurance. Imagine walking through knee-deep snow to hunt, gather, or simply fetch water, all while your body struggles to maintain its core temperature. Hypothermia was a constant threat, and frostbite could strike within minutes if skin was exposed. Yet despite these odds, humans not only survived, they adapted. One key to their endurance was understanding the environment. Cave women weren't wandering blindly. They observed seasonal patterns, migration routes of animals and natural shelters. They knew which caves offered protection from the worst winds and which valleys collected water that could be hunted or fished for. Survival required acute awareness and constant problem-solving, traits that modern humans sometimes take for granted. Interestingly, surviving winter also meant preparing for it. Early humans began storing food, gathering extra firewood, and reinforcing their shelters as soon as the first signs of frost appeared. For cave women, these tasks were not optional. They were a matter of life and death. These strategies weren't random. They were the product of trial and error over thousands of years. Each generation refined techniques for warmth, sustenance, and safety, creating a foundation of knowledge that would carry humanity through some of the harshest climates on Earth. Even something as basic as movement required adaptation. Cold, stiff muscles and icy terrain forced cave women to develop strong endurance, balance, and resilience. Simple tasks like climbing rocks for shelter or trekking through snow-laden forests became exercises in both physical strength and mental determination. The environment demanded ingenuity, finding creative solutions to problems like freezing water, slippery surfaces, or hunting scarce animals. The brutal winters of the Ice Age were more than just an obstacle. They shaped human evolution. Physical. Traits like body fat distribution, fur-like hair growth, and even social behaviors such as cooperative living were responses to extreme cold. Cave women weren't just passive victims of their environment. They were active problem solvers, engineers of survival, and custodians of life in a frozen world. By understanding the threats of their environment and learning to anticipate its challenges, cave women developed survival strategies that went far beyond instinct. They turned the frozen world into a manageable, if still dangerous, place. And while modern humans might shiver at a chilly day with a coat and a heater, our ancestors faced the same conditions with nothing but raw courage, observation, and creativity. Surviving. The Ice Age wasn't just about external tools. It was about how the human body and mind adapted to extreme conditions. Cave women, in particular, developed remarkable physical and behavioral strategies that maximized their chances of survival in freezing winters. Physically, early humans were shaped by necessity. Increased body fat, especially around the torso, acted as natural insulation, while shorter limbs helped conserve heat. Their circulation systems evolved to minimize heat loss, and even skin and hair patterns contributed to survival. Imagine standing barefoot on snow. Our ancestors' bodies could retain heat far better than ours today, thanks to these subtle adaptations over generations. But biology alone wasn't enough. Survival depended heavily on behavior. Cave women became masters of anticipation and preparation. They learned to observe weather patterns, track migrating animals, and gather food before the first snowfall trapped them in ice. This foresight was critical. A miscalculation, like waiting too long to store dried meat or failing to harvest tubers, could mean starvation. Fire was one of the most revolutionary tools in their arsenal. Controlled fire didn't just provide warmth, it was a means of cooking food, which increased caloric intake and improved nutrition, both vital for sustaining energy in harsh winters. Cave women often worked in teams to maintain fires through the coldest months, rotating responsibilities to keep embers alive. Fire also provided a psychological comfort, a sense of security against the darkness and howling winds outside the cave. Shelter played an equally vital role. While cave might conjure images of dark, damp spaces, these were carefully chosen locations, often with natural insulation, protection from wind, and proximity to water sources. Cave women reinforced their homes using mud, rocks, and animal hides, creating micro-environments that were far warmer than the frozen landscape outside. Even a small difference in temperature could be the line between life and death during the coldest months. Nutrition and foraging strategies were another critical adaptation. Cave women relied on high-calorie foods such as fatty meats, nuts, and seeds to maintain body heat. Seasonal storage was essential. Berries and preserved meats were stashed for when the snow made hunting impossible. Interestingly, they also understood natural antifreeze. Some roots and berries contain compounds that helped sustain energy levels and reduce the effects of cold exposure. Social cooperation cannot be overstated. Winter survival often required teamwork, sharing firewood, food, and knowledge. Older cave women passed on vital survival skills to younger members of the group, ensuring that each generation had a better chance of enduring the harshest months. These social networks were not just practical. They fostered trust, mutual protection, and emotional support, critical for psychological resilience in a long, unforgiving winter. Every action, from collecting firewood to preparing meals, became part of a survival rhythm. Cave women learned routines that balanced energy conservation with essential activity. They moved carefully to avoid accidents in icy terrain, planned expeditions for maximum efficiency, and prioritized tasks that ensured warmth, sustenance, and safety. Through a combination of biological advantages, learned behaviors, and social cooperation, cave women transformed the icy, hostile landscape into a livable environment. They turned threats into manageable challenges and created a survival strategy that balanced body, mind, and community. These adaptations laid the foundation for the next crucial aspect of winter survival: clothing and insulation. By this point, it's clear that surviving the Ice Age required more than just a strong body and clever behavior. Cave women relied on a growing toolkit of innovations, primitive yet highly effective, that allowed them to endure freezing winters. These tools were not luxuries, they were lifelines. One of the earliest and most vital tools was the fire-making kit. Flint, dry tinder, and kindling were carefully gathered and stored. Cave women became skilled at creating sparks using stones, understanding the right materials and techniques to ignite flames even in damp conditions. A single fire could keep a small group alive, and maintaining it required continuous attention, strategic placement, and knowledge of airflow to maximize warmth. Another essential tool was the cutting and scraping instruments used to prepare animal hides. Cave women turned these raw materials into clothing and blankets, a process that required not only dexterity, but also patience and foresight. Every cut, scrape, and stretch of the hide was deliberate, aimed at producing insulation that could withstand wind, snow, and freezing nights. These early tools, often made from flint or bone, were carefully crafted to last multiple seasons. Shelter modifications were another area where ingenuity shone. Cave women reinforced natural caves with rocks, mud, and plant materials, creating windbreaks and layered protection against the cold. In some regions, they even built semi-structured extensions outside the cave to block gusts and create dry areas. For cooking or working with hides, every improvement in their living space directly increased survival odds. Food preservation techniques were equally critical. Cave women mastered drying, smoking, and fermenting meat and fish, methods that prevented Spoilage during long food-scarce winters. Storing high-calorie foods close to the fire ensured that they were accessible and safe to eat, while also providing quick energy to counteract the cold. This careful planning meant the difference between starvation and survival during prolonged snowstorms. Even simple items like stones or wooden stakes served multiple purposes. Some stones were used to hold down hides or create windbreaks, while stakes could support lean-tos or drying racks. Nothing in their toolkit was wasted. Every item had a purpose, often multiple ones. This efficiency was born of necessity, but it also illustrates the clever problem-solving abilities of cavewomen in a harsh environment. Perhaps the most impressive survival technique was observation and adaptation. Cavewomen constantly scanned their environment, learning animal habits, weather patterns, and plant cycles. They could predict storms, locate food caches, and identify the safest routes through ice-laden terrain. Knowledge became a tool in itself, passed down through generations, sharpened by experience, and stored in the collective memory of the community. By the end of the winter, cavewomen had endured freezing nights, hunted in treacherous conditions, and managed their community's survival with remarkable precision. They turned adversity into expertise, using every resource at their disposal. From fire and clothing to shelters and food management, these early innovations reveal a profound intelligence and resilience that modern humans often overlook. When most people think of survival in the Ice Age, clothing rarely comes to mind, but for cavewomen, it was as crucial as fire or food. Without modern fabrics, insulated jackets, or thermal layers, they had to rely on nature itself. Their wardrobe was practical, functional, and ingeniously designed to keep them alive in freezing temperatures. The journey began with animal hides. Cavewomen discovered that the thick pelts of mammals like mammoths, reindeer, and bison could serve as natural insulation. But raw hides weren't enough. They needed processing. Scraping away fat and flesh, softening tough hides with natural oils, and stretching them to increase flexibility were all essential steps. This wasn't a quick task. Preparing a single hide could take days, but it was worth it because a well-treated pelt could trap body heat, repel wind, and endure harsh conditions for months. Layering became a critical technique. Cavewomen learned that multiple layers of thin hides or furs were more effective than a single thick pelt. This approach allowed heat to be trapped between layers while also enabling mobility, a vital factor when hunting, gathering, or walking long distances in snow. Even small adjustments like folding fur in certain directions or overlapping edges made a dramatic difference in warmth. Fastening these early garments was another challenge. Without modern sewing tools, cavewomen used bone needles, sinew threads, and even thorns to stitch hides together. Simple knots and loops allowed for flexibility and durability, ensuring that garments could be adjusted for movement or layered over other clothing. Every stitch was purposeful. A poorly sewn seam could expose the wearer to frostbite. Beyond basic survival, these clothes also served as social and cultural markers. Certain patterns, adornments, or the type of fur chosen might signify status, skill, or experience. While the primary goal was warmth, cavewomen didn't neglect creativity. They used the materials available to make functional clothing that also reflected identity and resourcefulness. The choice of materials extended beyond mammals. Bird skins, fish scales, and even plant fibers were incorporated where available. Lining boots with grass or moss improved insulation for feet, while head coverings crafted from smaller furs protected against heat loss through the skull. Every part of the body was accounted for, because even a single exposed limb could compromise survival in sub-zero conditions. Cavewomen also adapted clothing to seasonal variations. During harsher winters, extra layers were added, while milder periods allowed for lighter garments. Observing the natural world, they understood how to balance warmth with mobility, ensuring that clothing didn't hinder essential survival tasks. Finally, clothing was often paired with other survival strategies. Fire, shelters, and social cooperation amplified its effectiveness. Sitting near a fire in layered furs or huddling together in a well-insulated cave multiplied the protective effect of garments. Clothing didn't exist in isolation. It was one vital component in a sophisticated system of survival techniques. By mastering the creation, adaptation, and use of clothing, cavewomen transformed raw materials into life-saving armor against the cold. Their ingenuity laid the groundwork for the next level of survival, advanced techniques, tool use, and creative layering that made even the harshest winters manageable. Once cavewomen had mastered basic fur and hide garments, they began refining their clothing with more advanced techniques. Survival wasn't just about wrapping oneself in layers. It was about maximizing warmth, mobility, and durability, often with surprisingly clever solutions. One of the most remarkable innovations was the use of sinew and bone tools for sewing. Sinew, the strong connective tissue from animals, served as thread, while needles carved from bone allowed precise stitching. With these tools, cavewomen could create fitted clothing that clung to the body, reducing drafts and conserving heat. Every stitch mattered. Improperly joined seams could allow wind and moisture to penetrate, turning a life-saving garment into a liability. Layering techniques also evolved. Cavewomen learned to combine different types of hides and furs for optimal insulation. For instance, a softer, warmer inner layer would trap body heat, while a coarser, weather-resistant outer layer repelled wind and moisture. In some regions, multiple furs were stitched together to cover the entire body, including hands, feet, and head. Even the smallest exposed surface, like wrists or the nape of the neck, could be covered with clever extensions of layered materials. Footwear, too, became a carefully engineered survival tool. Early boots, often made from stitched hides and lined with grass or moss, insulated feet from snow and ice while maintaining flexibility for walking, climbing, or hunting. Some boots were even wrapped with leather strips to secure them tightly and prevent snow from entering. Cold feet could quickly incapacitate a hunter or forager, making footwear a critical focus for survival. Headgear and gloves were equally essential. Cavewomen recognized that significant body heat is lost through extremities, so they fashioned fur-lined hats, ear coverings, and mittens. The combination of multiple small innovations, like folding fur edges, adding moss insulation, or creating adjustable ties, showed an impressive attention to detail. These techniques were often passed down orally or through demonstration, forming a chain of practical knowledge that spanned generations. Cavewomen were also resourceful in adapting to local environments. In Arctic regions, thick mammoth fur provided unmatched insulation, while in milder areas, smaller animals' hides were sufficient. They experimented with textures, layering sequences, and even natural dyes which helped identify worn or patched clothing. Some garments were multifunctional, serving as blankets, windbreaks, or carrying materials, demonstrating a level of ingenuity that combined survival and efficiency. Another crucial aspect of clothing innovation was repair and maintenance. Harsh conditions could quickly damage garments, so cavewomen constantly patched holes, reinforced weak seams, and treated hides with natural oils or fats to maintain flexibility and water resistance. This maintenance wasn't just practical. It ensured that clothing retained its insulating properties throughout the long winter. The creation of these advanced garments also reinforced social cooperation. Sharing tools, hides, and knowledge became necessary, especially in larger groups. Older, more experienced women taught younger members how to process hides, sew efficiently, and layer for maximum warmth. Clothing was thus not just functional, it was a vehicle for passing down vital survival skills and strengthening the cohesion of the group. By combining tool-assisted sewing, advanced layering, environmental adaptation, and careful maintenance, cavewomen transformed raw hides into versatile, high-performance winter clothing. These techniques demonstrate a level of problem-solving and ingenuity that rivals many modern survival strategies, showing that necessity truly is the mother of invention. By now, it's clear that clothing alone wasn't enough to survive the Ice Age. It was one critical piece of a larger integrated survival system. Cavewomen combined their innovative garments with other strategies like fire, shelter, diet, and social cooperation to endure freezing winters. Clothing worked hand in hand with fire management. Furs and hides trapped heat, but a nearby fire amplified this effect. Cave women strategically positioned themselves and their sleeping areas around the fire, using layered hides as insulation against cold stone floors or icy winds. The synergy between clothing and fire meant that warmth wasn't just a fleeting sensation. It was sustained, controlled, and adaptable to changing conditions. Shelter played a complementary role. A well-chosen cave, insulated with mud, rocks, or additional hides, created a microclimate far more tolerable than the frozen landscape outside. Cave women lined sleeping areas with soft furs, creating beds that retained heat even through long sub-zero nights. Garments could then be layered more effectively, combining mobility and protection without unnecessary bulk. In essence, clothing and shelter acted as an integrated thermal system, each enhancing the effectiveness of the other. Diet was another crucial component. The high-calorie, nutrient-rich foods that cave women stored and prepared worked in concert with insulated clothing. Fatty meats, nuts, and dried fruits provided the energy needed to maintain core body temperature. Even the act of eating near the fire while wrapped in multiple layers maximized heat retention and efficiency. Without this combination, even the warmest garments could not fully protect against the extreme cold. Social cooperation further enhanced the system. Cave women shared furs, helped each other with layering, and coordinated fire maintenance. This teamwork ensured that no individual faced winter alone, which not only increased survival rates but also fostered emotional resilience. The mental toll of long, dark winters was mitigated by the comfort of community, demonstrating that survival was as much about relationships as it was about clothing or tools. Cave women also developed practical habits and routines that leveraged their clothing effectively. For instance, they would layer garments strategically for different tasks: heavier layers for sleeping or stationary work, lighter, flexible layers for hunting and gathering. Gloves, boots, and head coverings were used as modular systems, allowing them to adapt quickly to sudden storms or temperature changes. This modular thinking showed an advanced understanding of both human physiology and environmental conditions. Even small details mattered. Fur orientation, seam placement, and insulation in critical areas like wrists and ankles all made a measurable difference in survival. Cave women observed how garments performed under stress, wet snow, gusty winds, or prolonged cold, and continuously refined their designs. Each improvement increased the likelihood of surviving another harsh winter, creating a feedback loop of innovation and adaptation. Ultimately, clothing was not a standalone solution. It was a dynamic part of a larger survival strategy. When combined with fire, shelter, diet, and social cooperation, cave women could endure the Ice Age with remarkable resilience. Their ingenuity transformed raw materials into versatile, high-performance systems that protected life in ways modern humans might struggle to imagine without electricity, insulation, or synthetic fabrics. While clothing was crucial, cave women understood that surviving the Ice Age required a multifaceted approach. Fire, shelter, and a deep understanding of the environment were at the heart of their survival strategy. Fire was perhaps the most revolutionary tool. It provided warmth, allowed for cooking, warded off predators, and offered psychological comfort during long, dark winters. Cave women didn't just stumble upon fire, they mastered it. Flint, dried moss, and other natural tinder were carefully collected and stored, ensuring that a spark could be generated even under damp conditions. Once ignited, the fire needed constant attention, adding logs at the right intervals, controlling airflow, and positioning stones or hides to maximize heat retention. Fire wasn't just a luxury, it was a life-saving system that demanded knowledge, skill, and cooperation. Shelter was equally critical. Not all caves were suitable. Cave women had to choose locations protected from wind, with stable floors and dry conditions. Over time, they improved natural formations with mud, rocks, and layered hides, creating insulated microenvironments. Sleeping areas were lined with furs and moss to trap body heat, while low ceilings and enclosed spaces reduced airflow, retaining warmth. A well-prepared shelter could mean the difference between life and death during blizzards or sudden temperature drops. Understanding the environment was essential. Cave women observed seasonal patterns, animal migration routes and water sources to plan their activities. Predicting storms, knowing when to store food, and finding natural windbreaks or sunny slopes were part of a daily survival routine. They adapted to their surroundings, with an acute awareness that modern humans rarely experience firsthand. Every decision had consequences, and mistakes could be fatal. Integration of fire and shelter with clothing amplified effectiveness. A cave woman wrapped in layers of furs, sitting near a carefully maintained fire inside an insulated cave, could survive temperatures that would incapacitate an unprepared human in minutes. These strategies were interdependent. Fire kept furs dry and functional, shelter retained heat, and clothing provided the immediate barrier against cold. The combination created a sustainable survival system, showing an intuitive understanding of thermodynamics long before it was studied scientifically. Moreover, fire and shelter were social hubs. Maintaining fires and improving shelters often required collaboration. Groups worked together to cut firewood, construct windbreaks, and reinforce sleeping areas. Older members of the group taught younger women how to light fires efficiently, manage heat, and optimize shelter layouts. These activities strengthened community bonds, ensured knowledge transfer, and increased the group's collective survival. Odds. Through fire, shelter, and environmental mastery, cave women transformed the harsh, frozen landscape into a navigable and survivable space. These strategies highlight an essential truth. Survival wasn't about a single skill or tool, but the intelligent integration of multiple techniques. By combining observation, resource management, and practical ingenuity, they created a system that allowed them to endure the most unforgiving conditions Earth has ever offered. Survival in freezing winters wasn't just about staying warm. It required constant energy. Cave women needed food that provided sufficient calories, nutrients, and stamina to endure the extreme cold. Hunting, gathering, and storing food were vital skills, often as life or death as fire and shelter. During winter, many plant-based food sources became scarce. Berries, roots, and edible greens had to be harvested and preserved before snow covered the ground. Cave women developed methods to store, dry, and sometimes ferment these foods, ensuring that vital nutrients were available, even during long stretches of frost. Knowledge of which plants could be safely consumed and which were toxic was crucial and passed down orally through generations. A single mistake could be fatal, reinforcing the importance of careful observation and learned experience. Hunting provided high-calorie sustenance, particularly fatty meats, which were essential for maintaining body heat. Cave women often participated in cooperative hunting or trapping, targeting animals whose fat content would provide maximum energy. They utilized tools such as spears, nets, and stone knives, and often worked in teams to track, corner, and process prey. Hunting was not only a source of food, but a training ground for problem-solving, endurance, and skill development. Preservation was as important as acquisition. Meat and fish were smoked, dried, or stored in insulated caches to prevent spoilage. Fatty cuts were particularly valued, as fat generates more heat when metabolized than protein or carbohydrates. Even small amounts of these preserved foods could sustain individuals through harsh stretches of cold weather, when hunting opportunities were limited. Cave women also understood the synergy between food and other survival strategies. Eating near fires or while wrapped in furs conserved energy and maximized warmth. They scheduled foraging and hunting trips during the warmest parts of the day to minimize exposure, balancing caloric expenditure against gain. Every decision, from when to hunt to how to store provisions, was made with both efficiency and survival in mind. Social cooperation played a key role here as well. Sharing food ensured that no one went hungry, while collective efforts in hunting, gathering, and preserving created a resilient system of sustenance. Older, more experienced members guided younger ones in identifying edible plants, tracking animals, and preparing meals, creating a cultural knowledge base that strengthened survival across generations. Even the simple act of eating had strategic importance. Consuming high-energy foods before exposure to extreme cold or physically demanding tasks helped prevent hypothermia and fatigue. Cave women intuitively managed energy levels, ensuring that the group remained physically and mentally capable of navigating harsh winters. By mastering food acquisition, preservation, and strategic consumption, cave women complemented their clothing, fire, and shelter strategies. Together, these practices created a comprehensive survival system that ensured both individual health and community resilience. By the time we look at the full picture of Ice Age survival, it becomes clear that no individual could endure the freezing winters alone. Cave women relied heavily on social structures, routines, and cooperative strategies to ensure the safety and well-being of the group. Teamwork was central. Hunting, fire maintenance, shelter construction, and food storage were rarely solo endeavors. Groups coordinated tasks based on skills, age, and strength. Younger members might gather firewood or smaller plants, while more experienced hunters tracked and captured game. Sharing knowledge was just as vital as sharing resources. Teaching younger women how to process hides, prepare food, or navigate treacherous terrain ensured the group's survival over generations. Daily routines were carefully structured to conserve energy and maintain warmth. Cave women timed activities to coincide with the sun's warmth, rested strategically, near fires, and rotated responsibilities to avoid exhaustion. Even simple tasks like fetching water or repairing clothing were planned to minimize exposure to the cold. These routines were ingrained, learned from elders, and fine-tuned season after season. Predictability in daily life became a survival tool, reducing risk while maintaining efficiency. Social bonds also provided emotional resilience. Long, dark winters were physically grueling and psychologically taxing. Cave women relied on companionship, storytelling, and shared responsibilities to maintain morale. Sitting around the fire, repairing garments, or preparing meals together reinforced trust and solidarity, which were as crucial for survival as clothing or food. Groups that worked cohesively had higher survival rates, illustrating that emotional and social strategies were deeply intertwined with practical ones. Cooperative defense against predators and environmental threats was another survival advantage. Wolves, large cats, and other Ice Age predators posed constant danger. Cave women and their communities developed strategies to stay safe, placing sentries near fire, using noise and light to deter animals, and positioning shelters in protected areas. These group strategies minimized risk and maximized the effectiveness of individual skills and tools. Adaptability and flexibility were also critical. Winters could vary in severity, storms could come suddenly, and food availability could fluctuate. Cave women adjusted routines, redistributed resources, and reprioritized tasks based on real-time observation. This constant evaluation and adaptation was a hallmark of survival. It demonstrated that intelligence, coordination, and foresight could be just as important as physical strength or technical skill. Ultimately, the Ice Age survival system was a holistic integration of clothing, fire, shelter, food, and social cooperation. Each element reinforced the others. Clothing conserved heat, fire amplified it, shelter protected it, food sustained it, and teamwork ensured it. Cave women were not simply enduring. They were orchestrating a complex survival strategy that balanced physical, mental, and social needs. By understanding these interwoven strategies, we gain a profound appreciation for the ingenuity, resilience, and intelligence of our ancestors. Far from being boring, these cave women were architects of survival, demonstrating creativity, foresight, and adaptability that allowed humanity to thrive under conditions that would challenge even modern humans. After exploring the harsh winters of the Ice Age, one thing becomes clear: cave women were far from boring. They faced a frozen world with ingenuity, resilience, and creativity that allowed them to survive and even thrive without modern conveniences. Every aspect of their daily life, from clothing and fire to food and shelter, was carefully orchestrated to maximize warmth, safety, and energy. They observed the natural world, adapted to its challenges, and developed tools and techniques that ensured survival for themselves and their communities. But perhaps the most remarkable lesson isn't in the tools or furs, it's in their collaboration, foresight, and problem-solving. These women mastered teamwork, built social structures that nurtured knowledge and created routines that balanced efficiency with protection. Their lives remind us that survival isn't just about physical strength. It's about observation, adaptation, and human ingenuity. The next time you pull on a jacket or light a fire, take a moment to reflect. These simple comforts are built on thousands of years of trial, error, and creativity. Cave women endured what many would deem impossible, leaving behind lessons that continue to inspire resilience, resourcefulness, and the power of human innovation.